Welcome back to Inclusion Revolution here on Eastlink TV, and I'm joined by Andy Cox, a mental health advocate for youth. And Andy, when we broke, I was asking you a little bit about the process, but before we go there, I really want to talk about when we should be calling you or our doctors or any of that, because one of the things I've experienced in my time with families and youth with mental health is that oftentimes there's signs, but we don't necessarily know what those signs are or what to look for, and we often write it off to teenage angst or, oh, he's just going through a phase. We all love to hope that. And because of the stigma of mental health, we often avoid some of the clearer signs. I wondered if you could share with me, and of course with our audience, a little bit about some of the things that if you saw in your child or friend that might make you want to think it's more than just a little teen angst.
Sure. Not a clinician, but
from your experience.
My experience, and also working with youth and clinicians, I'll give some signs. And you're right. There's a difference between different teen behaviors and mental health problems as opposed to a mental illness. But some things, a youth may be isolating and feeling worthless and useless. Their sleep may be messed up. Their eating patterns. They may even feel, suicidal. And, that's not the person, that's the illness. That's a symptom of an illness. So those things may lead towards something like depression, but then there's mania, things like, pressured speech and, kind of abnormal ideas, and very happy above normal.
Extreme behaviors in a sense.
Quite extreme, yeah. And then there's some maybe suffer from psychosis or eating disorders, or there's so many. So those are some of the signs when they would hopefully go to their mom, the teacher, GP, and then hopefully come to
And
us.
even if often they don't go to that person, it's that person seeing it and looking for those signs and saying this is more than just that so-called teen angst. And some of the things I heard you say, just to kind of have a little bit of a checklist going, and that was number one, obviously if they become really depressed and almost suicidal, that's kind of like a heads up, obviously, but also when there's, like, you start to see eating disorders and really dramatic changes in behavior that are just like, for instance, I was in drama club and I was the star of all the plays, and then one day I decided I wanted no part of it and wouldn't be touching stuff like that, and it used to be my passion. So a parent might say, oh, is she just growing out of drama? But sometimes that's also, I know, a sign, well, in my case it was a sign of my own sinking into a depression and some of the other resulting mental health challenges that I faced. But it's really important because I think so many people want so badly for it not to be true, which is where the stigma comes in, that they'll often avoid those signs and hope it's the teen angst. So what, if anything, do we do there? I mean, I guess what we do is we keep doing what we're doing, which is educating on these issues and trying to provide people with real points to look at and say, if that's happening, we need to talk to someone. So let's say it is happening and the parent has acknowledged that these are signs that I recognize in my own child. What happens next? Right. What should they do next? Because one of the things that happens is I may identify, but I don't know where to go or what to do and where to even start, especially with a child. Yeah,
number one would be to a GP, and mental health is rampant, and GPs see a lot of mental illness, and hopefully the GP, maybe the GP, if they're not able to help with medication or what, hopefully they can refer to our services, that clearinghouse, and then we all have all these subspecialty programs.
So you can help determine what they need if they can just sort of get to you, essentially. And I say you, I mean your plethora of services within the mental health and addictions IWK piece, right? And we're going to make sure you give that number and any website information as well, because I think that's really important. So so Mom is called. Let me ask you this, because this happens a lot in my experience. The youth themselves is going, why did you call? I'm not interested, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not the one with the problem. And I mean, frankly, I've heard that enough to know that it gets said. Does a parent then, do we recommend that the parent go, I hear you, but I'm calling the doctor? I mean, this is a lot where it stops. Is a parent going, fine. How much do I want to fight with you? And do you have any advice or even information? And I'm not saying so much as a clinician, as just a person who's experienced these kinds of challenges from families. How do we get to the point where we can be compliant, the youth can join into this process rather than be dragged in? Or do we have to accept that sometimes we're dragging people in order to support them, which is challenging, but often necessary?
Yeah, that's a huge issue.
I like the huge issues. Go for it, Andy.
No. And
just your thoughts.
I come in with rights issues there and getting
that's right.
Help. Yeah, having the parent get as much education as possible, finding somebody who's gone through the system like myself can kind of offer some guidance, and it's not that bad. This can happen, and you can come through with it. But it is hard. I mean, the 1 in 5 or the 1 in 4 people who have a mental illness, well, 1 in 5 youth don't get the 1 in 5 youth with mental illness don't get the service. Be it,
so 20% of all youth
stigma.
that have mental health are not going near services, and it's primarily, in your opinion and frankly mine, the stigma. And as much as we do, and that's why you're in systemic as well as I know advocacy, because you're trying to change it from the top, but meanwhile supporting at the very ground level. And I think that's what's so fascinating about you and your role in the community. And you're sort of an invisible role, but it's so far-reaching and so important. I wanted people in our community to know about what you're doing, what IWK and Health and Addictions is doing, but also the fact that you're this individual who understands mental health, who understands the challenges around it, as we all do. But again, we don't come with instructions, so you and I have very different experiences, and we don't get to be just two of the same, because that doesn't happen. But for you personally, can you take me through the process of where perhaps a youth would be reached out to you, or a GP calls and says, I have this youth, I want to work with you because he's not going to just go here or go there, he's a little resistant. Where do you fit in, or can you tell me how you could help in that environment?
Sure. So, I mean, for the GP to go right to the services, again, it's the clearinghouse. But sometimes I can be kind of the in-between and educate them around our services, and talk about myself as going through the illness and accessing services. I also have a great relationship with the programs, so therefore if maybe a youth is needing services even more, then maybe we can look at getting him in or her a little quicker than
I understand. So you really are the guy that could probably do a lot more than most, simply because you have your hand in, frankly, so many pots, and I think that's a good thing, by the way, not a bad thing. In this case, it's a good thing. But it's what we need. We need a navigator. So I guess you're really a navigator for the youth. Now, here's my next question. It's a little tougher. I'm 19 tomorrow, and you've been my guy, and you've supported me in ways myself and my family could never imagine. Now what?
Yeah, we, our programs, we don't kick the youth, into the adult system. We and myself have a good relationship with the adult system, Capital Health here in Halifax, and we make sure it's not a one-night thing. It's a process getting into the next system. Yeah. Right.
So the good news is you're not dropped like something on the doorstep, in a sense, because I've always been concerned about after the IWK experience, because it is 19, and we all know that's not all resolved by 19, and we'd like it to be, but it often isn't. So you're involved in that transition phase, so that person has that sort of peer advocate as they go through it. I think that's really important. We're going to take a quick break because I have to. And when we come back, we're going to wrap up a little bit of discussion of some of the other things that you're doing in our community, and I find it, again, fascinating. For Inclusion Revolution, this is Tova and Eastlink TV saying come back in just a moment, because we're going to go for a quick break. And when we come back, my good friend Andy Cox is going to tell us a little bit more about how to support mental health youth in this community. Great.